The chamber stretched wide enough to hold 1,000 beings, its ceiling lost somewhere in the artificial sky above. Commander Vexlar stood at the center of it all, his forearms hanging loose at his sides. The scales that once gleamed with the pride of the Crithian dominion now looked dull and cracked. His left eye had been replaced with a crude mechanical implant, courtesy of the human rescue team that found him drifting in an escape pod. The Galactic Council sat in a semicircle before him, representatives from 47 different species. They whispered among themselves, their translators creating a low hum of overlapping voices. Some looked at him with pity, others with barely concealed contempt. A few simply looked confused. Ambassador Thisica of the Valorian Empire leaned forward, her crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. Commander Vexlar, you stand before this council as the sole survivor of the Fourth Fleet. 12,000 of the Dominion's finest warriors accompanied you to the Kepler's Edge system. You alone returned. Vexlar said nothing. What could he say? The numbers spoke for themselves. The Crithian Dominion has filed a formal complaint against humanity, Thisica continued. They claim humans violated 17 articles of the Galactic Warfare Convention. They demand sanctions, reparations, and the surrender of human military command for trial. She paused, her crystalline fingers tapping against the podium. However, humanity has declined to attend this tribunal. They sent only a brief message stating that you would explain everything. A ripple of mutters spread through the council. Councillor Brecht, a massive being covered in thick fur, slammed one of his 6 arms against his desk. This is an outrage. The humans mock us with their absence. Perhaps, Thisica replied calmly, or perhaps they believe Commander Vexlar's testimony will be more convincing than any defense they could offer. Her multifaceted eyes fixed on Vexlar. Commander, tell us what happened at Kepler's Edge. Tell us how a species that achieved faster than light travel only 60 years ago managed to destroy the most decorated fleet in Crithian history. Vexlar's mandibles clicked together nervously. He had not slept properly in 8 months. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them. The humans. Those strange, flat-faced bipeds with their forward-facing eyes and their terrible, terrible patience. We underestimated them, he began, his voice rough from disuse. All of us did. When humans first made contact with the galactic community, we thought them weak, soft. They came from a medium-gravity world, possessed only moderate strength, had no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. By every metric we use to measure species, they seemed unremarkable. Yes, Brecht interrupted. We have all read the human species profile. Get to the point, Commander.
How did they destroy your fleet?
Vexlar's good eye fixed on the furry counselor. I am getting to the point. You need to understand what we thought of them to understand what they did to us. Thisica raised a hand, silencing Brecht. Continue, Commander. Vexlar took a breath. The Dominion's conflict with humanity began over a mining dispute in the Kepler system. 3 planets rich in heavy metals. Humans had established colonies there first. But the Dominion claimed prior exploration rights. The legal arguments went back and forth for 2 years. Then the Dominion decided to resolve the matter. Traditionally, he paused, remembering. We sent the Fourth Fleet. Not to exterminate the humans, we are not monsters. We followed the Galactic Warfare Convention exactly. We sent formal notice of our intent to claim the system by force. We allowed the human civilians to evacuate. We gave them 2 full cycles to remove their military assets or prepare for honorable combat. And how did the humans respond? Thisica asked. They sent no formal reply, Vexlar said. No acceptance of our terms. No counteroffer. Nothing. For 2 cycles, we received only silence. We thought perhaps their translation systems had failed, or that they were simply too primitive to understand galactic protocol. He clicked his mandibles again, a nervous habit he had developed since the battle. When the deadline passed, we entered the system. Our fleet was magnificent. 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, 200 escort vessels. Admiral Threknor commanded from the flagship Unbreakable Will. He had won 34 void battles without a single loss. He believed this would be 35. The council members leaned forward. Even Brecht had stopped his complaining. We expected the humans to meet us in formation. That is how warfare works in the galaxy. 2 fleets face each other. Ships of similar class engage. The side with superior technology, tactics, and courage wins. Simple, clean, honorable. Vexlar's voice grew quieter. but there were no human ships waiting for us. They fled? Breketh asked, sounding hopeful. No, Vexlar replied. They were there. We detected power signatures, drive emissions, communication bursts, but we could not see them. Our sensors kept giving false readings. The Admiral ordered the fleet to advance in battle formation toward the third planet, where the largest human colony was located. He paused, his mechanical eye whirring as it focused. That is when we entered the debris field. Debris field? Thesica asked. The humans had been mining asteroids in the system for years. They left behind fields of broken rock, metal fragments, dust clouds thick enough to scatter sensor beams. The Admiral was annoyed but not concerned. Debris fields are common around mining operations. We simply activated our forward shields and continued through. Vexlar's voice began to shake. Small craft appeared from within the asteroids. Human fighters, tiny things barely larger than our life pods. They moved unlike anything we had seen before. They did not fly in formation. They did not broadcast challenges. They simply attacked. Surely your point defenses handled them, a counselor said. Our point defenses were designed to stop missiles and torpedoes, weapons that travel in predictable ballistic paths, Vexlar explained. These human pilots flew their craft manually. They dodged, weaved, changed direction constantly. They hid behind debris, used our own fleet as cover. When we fired at them, they would duck behind an asteroid and our shots would either miss or hit the rock. The debris absorbed most of the energy. He continued, his voice growing hollow. They did not try to destroy our ships at first. They targeted our sensors, our communication arrays, our shield projectors. Small strikes, surgical cuts. Within an hour, the fleet's coordination began to break down. Ships could not communicate clearly. Sensor data became unreliable. The debris and the jamming created chaos. And Admiral Threknor did nothing, Brekth demanded. He ordered the fleet to close ranks and press forward, Vexlar said. Standard procedure when facing harassment from lightcraft. We pushed through the debris field. We reached the third planet, and that is when we realized the truth. He looked up at the council and several members flinched at the haunted look in his eye. We thought we were hunting the humans. We thought we were advancing on their position. We did not realize the truth until it was too late. His mandibles trembled. We were not hunting them. They were hurting us. Like animals. The debris field, the attacks, the sensor jamming, all of it was designed to push us exactly where they wanted us to go. We thought we were following our battle plan. We were actually following theirs. The chamber fell silent. We thought we were in control, Vexlar whispered. We thought we understood warfare. We were wrong. So very, very wrong. Thesica allowed a moment of silence before speaking again. Commander, you said the humans were hurting your fleet. Please explain what you mean. Vexlar nodded slowly. The debris field was not a random obstacle. It was designed. Every asteroid placement, every cloud of metal fragments, every chunk of ice, all of it formed a path. The human attacks seemed random, but they were not. Every time the Admiral considered changing course, human fighters would appear from that direction, forcing us back onto the path. He gestured with one of his forearms, trying to recreate the movement in the air. Imagine a canyon with high walls. Now imagine those walls are invisible, made of threat and danger instead of stone. That is what the humans created. They did not have enough ships to fight us directly, so they made a battlefield where direct fighting was impossible. Counselor Brekth shifted uncomfortably in his seat. This is unconventional, but surely your shields protected you from these light craft. Yes and no, Vexlar replied. Our shields are powerful. They can withstand direct hits from weapons of similar class. But shields require power, constant power. The human fighters did not try to break through our shields with force. They kept them active, constantly, for hours. He saw the confusion on some of the council members' faces and tried to explain differently. Think of it like this. If you hold up a weight for 1 minute, it is easy. Hold it for an hour and your arms begin to shake. Hold it for 10 hours and you cannot hold it anymore. Our shields work the same way. The humans kept forcing us to maintain maximum defensive power, draining our reactors slowly. Ambassador Thesica's crystalline body seemed to darken slightly. Energy warfare. They were exhausting your resources. Yes, Vexlar confirmed. But we did not understand this at first. The Admiral believed we were simply dealing with an irritating but ultimately harmless harassment. He kept the fleet moving forward. We were so focused on reaching the planet, on coming to grips with the human fleet in proper combat, that we did not notice what was happening to our supply situation. One of the younger counselors, a floating being made of organized gas, spoke up in a voice like wind through trees. Your supply ships were with the fleet, were they not? They were, Vexlar said quietly, protected in the center of our formation as is proper. But the humans did not attack like a proper fleet. Small teams of human craft slipped through our perimeter. We would detect them, dispatch escort vessels to drive them away, and they would flee. We thought we were defending successfully. He paused, his mandibles clicking rapidly. We did not realize until much later that these were not attack runs. They were reconnaissance. The humans were mapping our formation, learning which ships were escorts, which were combat vessels, which were supply and support. They were studying us. And then? Thesica prompted. Then they changed tactics, Vexlar continued. The harassment from the debris field stopped. Suddenly, completely, the Admiral was pleased. He thought we had driven them off, that they had exhausted their fighter reserves. He ordered the fleet to accelerate toward the planet. We were eager to finally face the human fleet in proper battle. Vexlar's voice became hollow again. 20 minutes later, the supply ship provision bearer exploded. The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Supply ships were considered non-combatants. Attacking them was technically legal but culturally taboo in galactic warfare. Then the medical frigate Gentle Mercy was destroyed, Vexlar went on. Then the repair vessel Swift Hand. Then 2 more supply ships. Within an hour, half our support fleet was gone. Where did the attacks come from? Brecht demanded. Surely your sensors detected the launch signatures. That is the thing, Vexlar said, his voice barely above a whisper. There were no launches. No torpedoes fired from a distance. The humans had attached explosive charges to our supply ships during their reconnaissance runs. Small magnetic devices that clung to the hull, invisible to our sensors because they were not powered. Just sitting there, waiting. He looked around at the shocked faces. The humans call them mines. We have similar weapons, but we use them to defend fixed positions. Asteroid bases, space stations, we never imagined using them offensively, attaching them to enemy ships like parasites. The chamber fell silent again. Finally, Thesica spoke. This is certainly unconventional, but your fleet still vastly outnumbered the human forces. 12 dreadnoughts against what intelligence suggested was perhaps 24 human capital ships. Yes, Vexlar agreed. We still had overwhelming superiority. Admiral Threknor was furious about the supply ships, but he adapted. He ordered all remaining support vessels to the rear of the formation and doubled their escort. He accelerated our advance. We would reach the planet in 6 hours, engage the human fleet, destroy it, and resupply from the human orbital facilities. His mechanical eye whirred as he looked at each council member in turn. That was when we learned what human warfare truly means. We were not fighting soldiers. We were fighting predators. Predators? The gaseous counselor asked, sounding confused. On Earth, the human homeworld, there are creatures that hunt other creatures for food, Vexlar explained. The humans evolved from one of these predator species. They still think like predators. They study their prey. They learn patterns, they wait, and when the moment is right, they strike. He gestured again, trying to make them understand. Most species in the galaxy evolved from prey animals or plants. We think in terms of defense, of community, of standing together. Humans think in terms of the hunt, of isolating the weak, of creating fear, Brecht bristled. The Crithians are warriors. We do not fear. We did not fear, Vexlar corrected quietly. Before Kepler's Edge, we did not know what fear meant. The humans taught us, he continued with his story. As we approached the planet, human ships finally appeared on our sensors. But not in formation, not in a battle line. They appeared scattered around the fleet at maximum weapons range. They would fire a few shots, then retreat before we could respond effectively. Then they would appear somewhere else and do it again. Hit and run tactics, Thesica observed. Cowardly but not particularly effective against a disciplined fleet. That is what we thought, Vexlar said. The Admiral was annoyed but confident. Human weapons could not penetrate our dreadnought armor at that range. Their attacks were causing minimal damage. We began to think they were desperate, throwing whatever they had at us in a futile attempt to slow our advance. His voice dropped. We were wrong. The humans were not trying to damage us. They were separating us. He explained in detail how the human attacks always focused on specific ships, forcing those vessels to break formation slightly to evade, how the attacks would shift to different targets, creating small gaps in the fleet's cohesion, how over the course of 2 hours, the tight defensive sphere the Admiral had ordered gradually became stretched and irregular. By the time we reached orbit around the third planet, we were no longer a single fleet, Vexillar said. We were clusters of ships still close enough to provide mutual support, but no longer moving as one unit. The Admiral noticed this and ordered the fleet to reform, and that is when the real attack began. He stopped, his whole body trembling. One of his hands reached up to touch the mechanical eye, a gesture he seemed unaware of. "Commander?" Thusika prompted gently. "They were waiting," Vexlar whispered. "The humans were waiting for us to bunch up again. Waiting for us to bring our ships closer together while our shields were weakened from hours of constant activation. While our point defenses were divided watching in all directions, while our crews were tired from constant alert status." He looked up at the council. "That is when we learned that humans do not just hunt. They plan. Every action they took from the moment we entered the system was designed to bring us to that exact moment, in that exact condition, in that exact location." His voice became almost inaudible. We thought we understood warfare. We knew nothing. Nothing at all. The council chamber remained silent as Vexillar gathered himself to continue. His breathing had become labored, and a medical drone floated closer to monitor his condition. He waved it away with one hand. "When the human attack began," he said slowly, "it came from everywhere at once, not from a single direction, not from their fleet, from the planet itself." Thusika leaned forward. "The colony? But you said you allowed the civilians to evacuate." "We did," Vexlar confirmed. "Or so we thought. The orbital platforms we detected were supposed to be mining facilities, civilian infrastructure. Our sensors showed them as inactive, powered down. We thought the humans had abandoned them." His mandibles clicked bitterly. The humans wanted us to think that. He described how the platforms had suddenly activated, revealing themselves as military installations disguised as civilian equipment. Weapons that had appeared to be mining lasers and refining equipment began firing on the Crithian fleet at close range. "We were in orbit," Vexlar explained. "We could not maneuver freely without risking collision with other ships or falling into the planet's gravity well. The humans had waited until we were trapped by physics itself." Counselor Breketh slammed his desk again. "This is deception! They disguise military assets as civilian infrastructure. This violates the convention." "Does it?" Vexlar asked quietly. "We checked later after everything. The platforms were registered as dual-use facilities. Mining equipment that could be converted for defense if needed. Technically legal. The humans had filed the proper documentation years before. We simply never thought to look at it closely because we assumed humans would follow standard military practices." He continued with his account. "The orbital bombardment had lasted only minutes, but it threw the Crithian formation into chaos. Ships broke away from the regroup maneuver to avoid the weapons fire. Point defense systems, already taxed from hours of alert, failed to stop all the incoming fire. 3 cruisers took significant damage. 1 destroyer was destroyed outright when a shot penetrated its weakened shields and struck its reactor. Admiral Threknor ordered the fleet to pull back to a higher orbit and destroy the platforms," Vexlar said. "A reasonable response. We began to climb, preparing to bombard the orbital installations from a safe distance. That was when the human fleet appeared." "Finally," Brekth muttered. "Proper combat." Vexillar's good eye fixed on the furry counselor. "You still do not understand. There was nothing proper about what came next." He described how the human ships had emerged from behind the planet's moon, their approach masked by the lunar mass. But they did not form a battle line. They did not broadcast challenges. They simply accelerated at maximum burn, straight toward the Crithian fleet. "Suicide runs?" the gaseous counselor asked, confused. "That is what we thought," Vexlar said. The Admiral was shocked. "Ramming attacks are forbidden by the convention. They are considered barbaric, wasteful. But the humans were coming straight at us, their weapons firing continuously. We prepared to shoot them down." He paused, his mechanical eye whirring. "Then at the last moment, they changed course. All of them simultaneously. They did not ram us. They flew through our formation." The council members looked at each other in confusion. Thusika spoke carefully. "I do not understand." "They flew through your formation?" To what purpose? At first neither did we, Vexlar admitted. Human ships are smaller than ours, more maneuverable. They wove between our vessels at speeds that should have been impossible, firing as they went. But their shots were not aimed at our ships. They were aimed at space between our ships. He saw the continued confusion and tried to explain. The humans were deploying something. Small objects, thousands of them, scattered throughout our formation. We thought perhaps they were mines, like the ones they used on our supply ships. The Admiral ordered all ships to activate full sensor sweeps and begin evasive maneuvers. His voice grew quieter. That was exactly what the humans wanted. They wanted us spread out, moving unpredictably, unable to provide covering fire for each other. And they wanted our sensors active at maximum power, looking for the objects they had deployed. I still do not understand, Brecht said, frustrated. The objects were decoys, Vexlar explained. Sophisticated electronic warfare devices. When our sensors tried to track them, they broadcast false signals. Suddenly our screens showed hundreds of targets where only dozens existed. Our targeting computers could not distinguish between real human ships and fake sensor ghosts. Thysika's crystalline body pulsed with understanding. They blinded you with noise. Yes, Vexlar confirmed. And while we were trying to sort out what was real and what was not, while our ships were scattered and maneuvering independently, the humans attacked in earnest. He described the chaos that followed. Human ships would appear, fire, and disappear back into the cloud of sensor confusion. Crithian ships fired at targets that did not exist or held fire on targets that turned out to be real. Ships collided with each other, trying to evade threats they could not properly track. The fleet's coordination completely broke down. We tried everything, Vexlar said. We switched to visual targeting only, but human ships are small and their hulls are designed to minimize sensor reflection, making them hard to spot against the black of space. We tried blanket fire patterns, but that depleted our ammunition rapidly. We tried to regroup, but every time we moved, more decoys would deploy, more false contacts would appear. He stopped, his breathing ragged. The medical drone moved closer again, and this time he did not wave it away. Take a moment, Commander, Thysika said gently. After a minute, Vexlar continued. Admiral Threknor was a brilliant strategist. He had studied warfare for 300 years. He recognized what was happening. The humans were not trying to destroy the fleet quickly. They were grinding us down, depleting our ammunition, exhausting our crews, destroying our ability to fight as a coordinated force. His mechanical eye focused on Thysika. The Admiral made a decision. A hard decision, but a correct one given the situation. He ordered the fleet to retreat. We would pull back, reorganize outside the system, resupply, and develop countermeasures to the human tactics. It was the smart choice. But you did not escape, Thysika observed. No, Vexlar said softly. We did not escape. Because we had made a fundamental error. We assumed humans thought like we do. We assumed that once an enemy retreats, you allow them to leave. It is traditional. It preserves forces on both sides for future engagements. It is civilized. He looked around at the council members. Humans are not civilized. Not in the way we define it. When a human predator hunts, it does not stop because the prey runs away. It chases, it pursues until the prey is exhausted. Until it cannot run anymore. Breketh stood up, his fur bristling. You are saying humans pursued your retreating fleet? That is dishonorable. Cowardly! Call it what you want, Vexlar replied, his voice empty. The humans call it winning. They pursued us out of the system. They did not allow us to organize a proper retreat. They harassed us constantly. Ships that fell behind were swarmed and destroyed. Ships that tried to turn and fight were isolated and eliminated. They drove us like animals, not allowing us to rest, not allowing us to think. He described the running battle that followed. The Crithian fleet, once proud and organized, became a scattered group of ships fleeing in panic. Human forces picked them off one by one, always attacking the weakest ships first, destroying the ones that could not keep up. We tried to make stands, Vexlar said. Several times groups of ships turned to face the humans, to sell their lives dearly and allow the others to escape. The humans simply went around them. They ignored the ships that wanted to fight and continued pursuing the ones that were running. His voice cracked. Do you understand what that did to our morale? We wanted to fight. We wanted to die with honor. The humans did not let us. They treated us like we were not even worth the effort of a clean death. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Every council member stared at Vexlar. After 3 days of running, he continued, Admiral Threcknor gathered what was left of the fleet, 47 ships out of over 200. He sent a communication to the human forces. He offered surrender, offered to discuss terms, offered anything if they would just stop. And the human response? Thisica asked. Vexler's mandibles trembled. They sent a message buoy. It contained one sentence in Standard Galactic. We knew you would figure out Step 1. Welcome to Step 2. The meaning of those words hung in the air like poison. They had planned for our retreat, Vexlar whispered. They had predicted it, prepared for it. Everything that happened after we tried to flee was also part of their plan. They were not reacting to us. We were reacting to them. We had been doing what they wanted from the very beginning. He looked up at the council, and in his eye they saw something that chilled them all. We were not fighting an enemy fleet, he said. We were prey, and they were teaching us what it means to be hunted by humans. Ambassador Thisica called for a recess after Vexillar's last statement. The commander was escorted to a medical chamber while the council deliberated in hushed voices. When they reconvened an hour later, the atmosphere in the chamber had changed. The skepticism was gone, replaced by something darker. Vexillar stood at the center again, looking somehow smaller than before. His forearms hung limp and his scales seemed to have lost what little luster they had left. Commander, Thisica began, her voice careful, you mentioned a second step in the human plan. Please continue your testimony. Vexlar nodded slowly. Admiral Threcknor understood that we could not outrun the humans. Their ships were not faster than ours, but they did not need to be. They had positioned refueling stations along our escape route. They had prepared supply caches. They could maintain pursuit indefinitely while we continued to deplete our resources. He gestured with one hand, the movement tired. The Admiral made the only choice available. He ordered the remaining ships to form a defensive sphere and prepare for a final stand. 47 ships against approximately 30 human vessels. We still had numerical advantage. We still had superior firepower per ship. If we could force a direct engagement, we could win. And did you? Precht asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. The humans accepted the engagement, Vexlar said. Their ships approached in what appeared to be attack formation. For the first time since the battle began, they were following conventional tactics. The Admiral was relieved. He understood conventional warfare. We all did. His mechanical eye whirred as he looked at the council. That should have been our warning. When humans do what you expect them to do, it means they want you to expect it. He described how the human ships had approached in a standard battle formation. Their larger vessels at the front, smaller craft providing support. The Crithian fleet had prepared to meet them with concentrated fire, planning to destroy the human capital ships and scatter the rest. The first exchange of fire went in our favor. Vexillar continued. Our weapons outranged theirs. We damaged several human ships before they could close to effective range. The Admiral allowed himself hope. Perhaps we had finally broken through their planning. Perhaps they had overextended themselves. His voice became hollow again. Then 3 human ships broke formation and charged directly at our lines. Suicide runs just like before, but this time they did not veer away. They came straight at our dreadnought group at maximum acceleration. Thisica interrupted. Ramming attacks. Forbidden by the convention. They did not ram, Vexlar corrected. They exploded before reaching us. All 3 ships detonated simultaneously, approximately 2,000 meters from our front line. The explosions were massive, far larger than their reactor cores should have produced. The gaseous counselor made a sound like wind whistling through a narrow canyon. They turned their ships into bombs? Yes, Vexlar confirmed. But not just conventional explosives. The detonations generated electromagnetic pulses that overloaded our forward sensor arrays and temporarily disrupted our shields. For approximately 45 seconds, the front third of our defensive sphere was blind and vulnerable. He did not need to explain what happened next. The council members understood immediately. The remaining human ships attacked during those 45 seconds, Thisica said quietly. They destroyed 6 of our ships, Vexillar confirmed. 6 dreadnoughts gone in less than a minute. Ships that had survived hundreds of battles, crewed by warriors with centuries of experience, obliterated because the humans were willing to sacrifice 3 of their own vessels just to create a brief opening. Brecht stood again, his 6 arms gesturing wildly. This is madness. What kind of commander throws away ships and crews like that? Vexlar looked at him with something like pity. A human commander. A commander from a species that spent its entire evolutionary history learning that sometimes the only way to survive is to sacrifice, that sometimes you have to lose something valuable to gain something more valuable. He continued his account. The human attack had not stopped with that first strike. As the Crithian ships reeled from the losses, human boarding craft had launched from the remaining ships. Small, fast shuttles designed to carry assault teams. Boarding actions? Tisika sounded confused. In the middle of a fleet battle, the humans do not fight like we do, Vexlar reminded her. They do not respect the boundaries between space combat and ground combat. They use whatever works. The boarding craft headed for our damaged ships, the ones whose shields had been compromised by the electromagnetic pulse. He described how the human assault teams had cut through hulls and forced their way inside damaged Crithian vessels. How they fought in the corridors and compartments with a ferocity that shocked the Crithian warriors. We Crithians are larger than humans, Vexlar said, stronger. We have 4 arms to their 2. We have natural armor in our scales. In every physical metric we are superior, but in close quarters fighting in the narrow passages of a warship, none of that mattered. His voice grew softer, remembering. Humans are small, flexible. They could move through spaces we could not. They used the environment as a weapon. They knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. They targeted life support systems, power conduits, bridge access corridors. They did not try to kill everyone aboard. They tried to disable the ship as quickly as possible. But surely your Marines outnumbered them, a counselor asked. They did, Vexlar confirmed, but numbers meant less than we thought. Human soldiers are trained differently than ours. Every Crithian warrior is proud, brave, eager to face enemies in honorable combat. Human soldiers are trained to win, not to be honorable, not to be brave, to win. He explained how human assault teams used tactics that seemed cowardly by galactic standards. They set traps. They struck from ambush. They retreated, then attacked from a different direction. They used their own wounded as bait, leaving them in corridors to draw in Crithian Marines, then detonating explosives. I heard recordings from one of the ships they boarded, Vexlar said quietly. A human soldier was cornered by 5 of our warriors. He was wounded, bleeding from multiple injuries. Our warriors called for him to surrender. He laughed. Then he activated a device strapped to his chest and destroyed himself and all 5 warriors. The chamber fell silent again. The human who did that was not even a soldier, Vexlar continued. We identified his remains later. He was an engineer, a maintenance specialist, but when the boarding action began, he picked up a weapon and fought. That is what humans do. Every single one of them is a potential warrior. Every single one will fight if threatened, and every single one is willing to die if it means taking enemies with them. He described how 3 more Crithian ships were disabled by the boarding actions, how the crews, faced with humans who would not stop, who would not surrender, who would fight until literally dead, chose to abandon ship rather than continue fighting in those narrow corridors against an enemy that seemed to feel no fear. Admiral Threknor saw what was happening, Vexlar said. He ordered all ships to seal their hulls completely. No docking ports, no airlocks, nothing. If humans wanted in, they would have to cut through meters of armor plating. It would buy us time. His mandibles clicked. The humans did not try to board any more ships. They did not need to. They had already achieved their objective. Which was? Tesika asked. Fear, Vexlar said simply. They wanted us to fear them. They wanted us to understand that there was nowhere safe. Not in space combat, not in close quarters, not anywhere. They wanted us to know that every human we faced, regardless of size or specialty or role, was dangerous. He looked around at the council members. And it worked. After seeing what they did to our boarded ships, morale collapsed. Warriors who had never known defeat suddenly understood that defeat was not just possible, but likely. The fleet began to fracture psychologically before it fractured physically. Vexlar described the final phase of the battle, how the remaining Crithian ships tried to scatter, each one trying to save itself, how human forces pursued them individually, running them down one by one, how some Crithian ships tried to surrender. But the humans ignored the surrender signals and kept attacking until the ships were disabled or destroyed. Why? Brecht demanded. Why not accept surrender? Because humans study their enemies, Vexlar explained. They knew about Crithian honor culture. They knew that if they let ships surrender, we would rebuild our fleet and return someday to reclaim our honor. So they made sure there would be nothing left to rebuild. No ships, no survivors who could testify about lessons learned. Nothing. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Except me. They let me live deliberately. Thiska leaned forward. Explain. My escape pod was damaged, drifting, Vexillar said. A human patrol ship found me. They could have destroyed the pod. Instead, they brought me aboard. They treated my injuries. They gave me food, water, medical care. Then they put me back in the pod, programmed its systems to take me back to Crithian space, and sent me home. He looked up at the council with his one good eye and one mechanical replacement. Before they released me, their captain came to see me. A female human, young by their standards. She spoke to me in perfect Crithian. The council chamber remained in shocked silence for a long moment after Vexillar finished speaking. Ambassador Thiska was the first to recover, though her crystalline body pulsed with colors that suggested deep disturbance. Commander Vexillar, she said carefully, you have given this council much to consider. Your testimony suggests that humanity has violated numerous articles of the Galactic Warfare Convention. The use of deception, refusal to accept surrender, targeting of support vessels, deployment of unconventional weapons, and the psychological warfare you described. These are serious accusations. They are not accusations, Vexillar replied quietly. They are facts. But I have come to understand something during my 8 months of recovery and reflection. The humans did not violate the convention because they are evil or barbaric. They violated it because the convention was written by species who never had to fight for their survival the way humans did. Brecht slammed his desk again. Nonsense. Every species has faced challenges. Every species has known conflict. Vexillar's mandibles clicked in what might have been bitter amusement. Have they? Tell me, counselor. When was the last time your species faced extinction? When was the last time your people had to choose between honor and survival? Before Brecht could respond, Vexillar continued. I researched human history during my recovery. The humans gave me access to their databases, their libraries, their educational materials. Do you know what I learned? He looked around at the council members. Humans evolved on a death world. That is what they call it. Their planet has predators that could kill them, diseases that could wipe out entire populations, weather that could freeze or burn or drown them, other humans who would kill them for resources or territory or ideology. For 200,000 years, every single day was a fight to survive. His voice grew stronger, and they did not just survive. They thrived. They spread across their entire planet, adapting to every environment. They domesticated animals and plants. They built tools and weapons. They created art and music and philosophy. And yes, they created war. Terrible, horrible war. Vexillar activated a holographic display and images appeared in the center of the chamber. Images from human history, ancient battles with primitive weapons, medieval sieges, industrial warfare, nuclear explosions. The council members watched in growing horror. This is what humans call World War II, Vexillar said, highlighting one section of the timeline. It lasted 6 years. 100 million humans died. That is more deaths than some species have in their entire population. And this was only 70 years before they achieved faster-than-light travel. He changed the image to show rows of weapons. During that war, humans invented weapons that could destroy their entire civilization. Bombs that could level cities. Poison gases. Biological weapons. They looked at the most destructive things they could imagine and built them. Used them. Then built worse ones. The gaseous counselor made a sound of distress. Why would any species do this to itself? Because they were fighting for survival, Vexillar answered. Because they believed the alternative to victory was extinction. And because humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When survival demands it, humans will create anything, do anything, sacrifice anything. He switched off the display and faced the council directly. That is who we attacked at Kepler's Edge. Not a young species still learning about the galaxy. Not primitive warriors with more courage than sense. We attacked predators who spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. We attacked survivors who view extinction as unacceptable under any circumstances. We attacked innovators who see every problem as something to be solved, every obstacle as something to overcome. Thiska spoke softly. You seem to have gained a great deal of respect for humanity, Commander. Respect? Vexlar's good eye focused on her. No, not respect, understanding. I understand now what humans are and what they are capable of. But more importantly, I understand what we are not. He gestured at the council chamber, at the representatives from across the galaxy. We, all of us, have been playing at war for thousands of years. We follow rules. We maintain honor. We fight battles that are ultimately about pride and territory and politics. When we lose, we retreat. When we win, we celebrate. War is something we do, but it is not what we are. His voice grew harder. Humans are different. They do not play at war. They wage it with every fiber of their being. When they fight to win. And winning means the complete defeat of the enemy. They do not care about rules we invented. They care about survival. And they are very, very good at surviving. Brecht stood again, but this time his voice was uncertain. So what do you suggest, Commander? That we simply accept human aggression? That we bow before them? I suggest, Vexlar said, that we leave them alone. The chamber erupted in protests and arguments. Thysica had to call for order 3 times before the noise subsided. Explain your reasoning, she commanded. Vexlar nodded. The Crithian Dominion attacked humanity because we thought we could win easily. We thought we were dealing with primitives. We were wrong. But we were also wrong about human intentions. Humans did not come to the galaxy looking for conquest. They came looking for trade, knowledge, and peaceful coexistence. He activated the display again, showing diplomatic records. Before the Kepler's Edge incident, humans had formal trade agreements with 17 species. They had cultural exchange programs with 9 others. They shared technology freely with anyone willing to trade fairly. They followed every protocol, respected every custom, learned every language. The records scrolled past, showing years of peaceful human interaction with the galactic community. The humans only fought because we forced them to, Vexlar said. We claimed their colonies. We threatened their people. We gave them a choice between submission and war. They chose war because submission meant giving up their freedom, and humans will never do that. But they did not want war. He changed the image to show the message the human captain had given him. The humans want to be left alone. They want to build their civilization, raise their children, explore their interests. They will trade with anyone. They will share with anyone. They will be friends with anyone. But they will not be conquered. They will not be enslaved. They will not submit. Thysica studied the message for a long moment. And if we do not leave them alone, then more fleets will die, Vexlar said simply. Humans will study whoever attacks them. They will learn weaknesses. They will develop countermeasures. They will innovate new tactics. And they will win, because losing is not acceptable to them. He looked at each council member in turn. I spent weeks with the humans who rescued me. I talked with their doctors, their engineers, their soldiers. Do you know what I learned? The tactics they used against us were not special. They were standard. Every human military learns them. What they did to us, they can do to anyone. The chamber fell silent again. But more than that, Vexlar continued, I learned that humans have weapons they did not use against us. Things called nuclear weapons, antimatter bombs, biological agents. They have the capacity to destroy planets if they choose. They developed these weapons hundreds of years ago, long before they left their homeworld. Breketh's fur stood on end. Planet killers. That is forbidden by every civilized law. Yes, Vexlar agreed. And humans follow that law. They have these weapons, but they do not use them. They could have destroyed Crithian worlds in retaliation for our attack, but they did not. They defended themselves, destroyed our fleet, and then stopped. They showed restraint even though they had the power to do more. He let that sink in before continuing. That is why I say we should leave them alone. Not because we fear them, though we should. Not because they are stronger, though they are. We should leave them alone because they are offering us peace. They are offering to be neighbors, trading partners, perhaps even friends. All they ask is respect for their sovereignty. Thysica's crystalline body pulsed thoughtfully. And if we refuse? If the Council decides to sanction humanity for their actions, then humanity will leave the galactic community, Vexlar said. They will close their borders, end all trade, and focus on building their own civilization. They do not need us. We explored this galaxy for thousands of years before they arrived. In 60 years, they have matched our technology and surpassed us in some areas. In another 100 years, who knows what they will be capable of? He paused, then added quietly, Or worse, they might decide that a galaxy that sanctions them for defending themselves is a galaxy that will never accept them, and then they might decide to ensure their security in other ways. The unspoken threat hung in the air. A humanity that felt threatened might become an enemy to the entire galaxy. There is a third option, Vexlar said. We accept their peace offering. We establish formal relations based on mutual respect. We trade with them, learn from them, and let them learn from us. We welcome them into the galactic community as equals, not as subordinates or threats. Tysica looked at him for a long moment. You speak like a human advocate, Commander. I speak as someone who has seen what humans can do when threatened, Vexlar replied, and as someone who has also seen what they can be when treated with respect.